So I, said Merion, at my tent and sable bark may say, I many Trojan spoils retain, but now not near they be to serve me for my present use, and therefore I ask thee, and therefore ask I thee, not that I lack a fortitude to store with me, not that I lack a fortitude to store me with my own, forever in the foremost fights, my own, forever in the foremost fights that render men renown, I fight when any fight doth stir. And this perhaps may well be hid to others, but thou knowest, and I to thee appeal. But thou knowest, and I to thee appeal. Atrides, what I ever seemed, the same at every part, this day shall show me. To thee appeal. I know, replied the king. I know, replied the king, how much weight thou... The king, how much thou waste in every worth. What needst thou... I know, replied the king, how much thou waste in every worth. What needst thou therefore utter this? If we should now choose forth the worthiest men for ambushes in all our fleet and host, for ambushes are in all our fleet and host, for ambushes are services that try men's virtues most, since they're virtues most, since there the fearful and the firm will, as they are, appear. The fearful altering still his hue, and rests not anywhere, nor is his spirit capable of the ambush constancy, but riseth, changeth still his place, and croucheth curiously, on his bent haunches, half his height scarce seen above the ground, for fear to be seen, yet must see. His heart with many a bound offering to leap out of his breast, and, ever fearing death, the coldness of it makes him gnash, and half shakes out his teeth, where men of valor neither fear nor ever change their looks from lodging the ambush till it rise, but since there must be strokes wish to be quickly in their midst, thy strength and hand in these who should reprove? For if far off or fighting in the prease thou shouldst be wounded, I am sure the dart that gave the wound should not be drawn out of thy back or make thy neck the ground, but meet thy belly or thy breast in thrusting further yet when thou art furthest till the first, and before him thou get. When thou art furthest till the first, and before him thou get. But on, like children let us not stand. Thou get. But on, like children let not us stand bragging thus, but do, lest some hear and past measure chide that we stand still, and woo. Go chase a better dart, and woo. Go chase a better dart, and make Mars yield a better chance. Go chase a better dart, and make Mars yield a better chance. This said, Mars swift Meriones with haste a brazen lance took from his tent, and overtook, most careful of the wars, from his tent, and overtook. A brazen lance took from his tent, and overtook, most careful of the wars, Idomeneus, and such too in field. Idomeneus. And such too in field as harmful Mars and terror his beloved son, that without terror fights, and is of such strength that in war the frighter he affrights, when out of Thrace they both take arms against the Ephirian bands. Ephyrin? Okay. Out of Thrace they both take arms against the Ephyrian bands, or against the great-souled Phlegians, nor favor their own hands. Phlegians. Okay. Ephirian band. Both take arms against the Ephirian bands, or against the great-souled Phlegians. Okay. When out of Thrace they both take arms against the Ephirian. Out of Thrace they both take arms against the Ephirian bands, or against the great-souled Phlegians, not favor their own hands, but give the grace to others still. But give the grace to others still. In such sort to the fight marched these two managers of men, in armors full of light. Marched these two managers of men, in armors full of light. And first spake Merion. So I, said Merion, at my tent and sable bark may say. Full of light. And first spake Merion. On which part, son of Deucalion, serves thy mind to invade the fight? Is it best to set upon the Trojans in our battle's aid, the right or left-hand wing? Is it best to set upon the Trojans in our battle's aid, the right or left-hand wing? For all parts, I suppose, employed. To this the Cretan king employed. To this the Cretan employed. To this the Cretan king thus answered. Employed. To this the Cretan king thus answered. Atrides, when I ever seemed, thus answered. In our navy's midst are others that assist the two. In our navy's midst are others that assist the two aegis, Teucer too, with shafts the expertest of all the Grecians, and though small is great in fights of stand. And these, though huge he be of strength, will serve to fill the hand of Hector's self, that Priamist, that studier for blows. It shall be called a deed of height for him, even suffering throes for knocks still, to outlabor them, and bettering their tough hands, inflame our feet. If Jove himself casts not his firebrands amongst our navy, that affair no man can bring to field. Great Ajax Telamonius to none inflame our feet. If Jove himself casts not his firebrands amongst our navy, that affair that affair no man. Our navy, that affair no man can bring to field. Great Ajax Telamonius to none alive will yield that yields to death. To none alive will yield that yields to death, and whose life takes Ceres' nutritions. Telamonius, great Ajax Telamonius, to none alive will yield that yields to death, and whose life takes Ceres' nutritions, that can be cut with any iron or pashed with mighty stones. Not to Iacides himself he yields for combat. Not to Iacides himself he yields for combat set, though clear he must give place for pace and free swing of his feet. Since then the battle being our place of most care is made good by his high valor, let our aid see all powers be withstood that charge the left wing, and all powers be withstood that charge the left wing, and to that let us direct our course, where quickly feel we this hot foe. Our course, where quickly feel we this hot foe, let us direct our course, where quickly feel we this hot foe, or make him feel, where quickly feel we this hot foe, or make him feel our force. This ordered, swift Meriones went, and forewent his king. This ordered, swift Meriones went, and forewent his king, till both arrived where one enjoined, where in the Greeks' left wing the Trojans saw the Cretan king like fire in fortitude, and his attendant in bright arms so gloriously endued, both cheering the sinister troops at all the king addressed, and so the sinister troops all at the king addressed, and so the skirmish at their sterns on both parts were increased, that, as from hollow bustling winds engendered storms arise, when dust doth chiefly clog the ways which up into the skies the wanton tempest ravisheth, begetting night of day. Tempest ravisheth, begetting night of day. So came together both the foes, both lusted to essay, and work with quick steel either's death. Man's fierce corruptress, Fight, set up her bristles in the field, with lances long and light, which thick fell foul on either's face. The splendor of the steel in new scoured curates, radiant casques, and burnished shields did seal the assailor's eyes up. Shields did seal the assailor's eyes up. He sustained a huge spirit that was glad to see that labor, or in soul that stood not stricken sad. To see that labor, or in soul that stood not stricken sad. Thus these two disagreeing gods, old Saturn's mighty sons, afflicted these heroic men with huge oppressions. Jove, honoring Iacides, to let the Greeks still try their want without him, would bestow, yet still the victory on Hector and the Trojan power. Yet for Iacides, and honor of his mother queen, great goddess of the seas, he would not let proud Ilion the Greeks. He would not let proud Ilion see the Grecians quite destroyed, and therefore from the hoary deep he suffered so employed. And therefore from the hoary deep he suffered so employed great Neptune in the Grecian aid, who grieved for them and stormed extremely at his brother Jove. Yet both one goddess formed, and one brother Jove. Yet both one goddess formed, and one soil bred. But Jupiter precedence took in birth, and had more knowledge, for which cause the other came not forth of his wet kingdom, but with care of not being seen to excite the Grecian host, and like a man appeared, and made the fight. The host, and like a man appeared, and made the fight. So these gods made men's valors great, but equaled them with war as harmful as their hearts were good. And stretched those chains as far on both sides as their limbs could bear, in which they were involved past breach or loosing, that their knees might therefore be dissolved. Then, through a half-gray man, dissolved. Then, though a half-gray man he were, dissolved. Then, though a half-gray man he were, Crete's sovereign did excite the Greeks. Then, though a half-gray man he were, Crete's sovereign did excite the Greeks to blows, and flew upon the Trojans, even to flight. Even to flight. For he, in sight of all the host, Athryanius. Cabesus. I think that's good for now. Even to flight. For he, in sight of all the host, Athryanius slew, that from Cabesus with the fame of those wars thither drew. Those wars thither drew his new-come forces, and required, without respect of dower, Cassandra, fairest of Priam's race, assuring with his power a mighty labor to expel, in their despite, from Troy the sons of Greece. The king did vow that done he should enjoy his goodliest daughter. He in trust of that fair purchase fought. He in trust of that fair purchase fought. And at him, threw the Cretan king a lance that singled out this great assumer, whom it struck just in his naval stead. His brazen curates, helping naught, resigned him to the dead. Then did the conqueror exclaim, and thus insulted then, Athryonius, I will praise beyond all mortal men thy living virtues, if thou wilt now perfect the brave vow thou madest to Priam for the wife he promised to bestow. And thus insulted then, Athryonius, I will praise beyond all mortal men thy living virtues, if thou wilt now perfect the brave vow Perfect the brave vow thou madest to Priam for the wife he Priam for the wife he promised to bestow. For the wife he promised to bestow. And where he should have kept his word, there we assure thee here, to give thee for thy princely wife, the fairest and most dear of our great general's female race, from which his Argive hall we all will wait upon to Troy, if with our aids and all, if with our aids and all, thou wilt but raise this well-built town. Come, therefore, follow me, that in our ships we may conclude the royal match with thee. I'll be no jot worse than my word. With that he took his feet, and dragged him through the fervent fight, at which did Asius meet the victor in which did Asius meet the victor to inflict revenge. He came on foot revenge. He came on foot to inflict revenge. He came on foot before his horse that on his shoulders breathed so closely evermore his coachman led them to his lord, who held a huge desire to strike the king, but he struck first, and underneath his chin, and his chin at his throat's height, through the other side his eager lance drave in, and down he bustled like an oak, a poplar, or a pine, hewn down for shipwood, and so lay. His fall did so decline the spirit of his charioteer, that, lest he should incense the victor to impair his spoil, he durst not drive from thence his horse and chariot, and so pleased with that respective part, Antilochus, that for his fear he reached him with a dart about his belly's midst, and down his sad course fell beneath the richly builded chariot, there laboring out his breath. The horse Antilochus took off, when, grieved for this event, Deiphobus drew passing near, and at the victor's sent a shining javelin, which he saw, and shunned, with gathering round his body in his all-round shield, at whose top with a sound it overflew. Yet seizing there, it did not idly fly from him that winged it. His strong hand still drave it mortally on Prince Hypsenor. It did pierce his liver, underneath the veins it passeth. His shrunk knees submitted him to death. And then did love Deiphobus his shrunk knees submitted him to death. And then did love Deiphobus miraculously vaunt. I'm pretty sure we have. Nope, don't have Deiphobus. Okay. I guess let's pull Hector, Paris, Helenus. Just so he doesn't sound like any of them. Not that it really matters. He's not going to talk to anybody else except Hector, I don't think. Hector, Paris, Helenus. Who else do we have of the sons of Priam? Well, that's probably good. Trojans! Hector and Chryses' fame! Because thy sharp reproach. Now Asius lies not unrevenged, nor doth his spirit want the joy. Now Asius lies not unrevenged. All right, let's make a note. That's Deiphobus's voice. $30. And then did love Deiphobus miraculously vaunt. Now Asius lies not unrevenged, nor doth his spirit want the joy I wish it, though it be now entering the strong gate. Now Asius lies not unrevenged, nor doth his spirit want the joy I wish it. Nor doth his spirit want the joy I wish it, though it be now entering the strong gate of mighty Pluto. Though it be now entering the strong gate of mighty Pluto, since this hand hath sent him down a mate. The glory in him grieved the Greeks, and chiefly the great mind of martial Antilochus, who though to grief inclined, he left not yet his friend. But ran and hid him with his shield, and to him came two lovely friends that freed him from the field, Mecistius, son of Ichius, and the right Alastor. He spells it Alastar. I guess I'll pronounce it tar then. Alcathuus. All right. Echius. Mecistius. Esetes. Hippodamia, who I pronounced, I believe, Hippodamia in Post-America. But this is Hippodama? Hippodama? Let's check that. That's just the way he spells it, I'm pretty sure. I don't recognize a character. Hippodama. Yeah, okay. So it's the same character as Hippodamia. Hippodamia. So I guess we would say hippodama. Okay. And to him came two lovely friends that freed him from the field, Mecistius, son of Echius, and the right nobly born Alastar. From the field, Mecistius, son of Echius, and the right nobly born Alastar, bearing him to fleet, and did extremely mourn. Alastar, bearing him to fleet, and did extremely mourn. Idomeneus sunk not yet, but held his nerves entire, his mind much less deficient, being fed with firm desire to hide more Trojans in dim night, or sink himself in guard of his loved countrymen. And then Alcathous prepared work for his valor. And then Alcathous prepared work for his valor, offering fate his own destruction. A great hero, and had grace to the destruction. A great hero, and had grace to be the loved son of Esetes, son-in-law to Prince Aeneas' sire, Hippodama. Prince Aeneas' sire, Hippodama marrying, who most inflamed the fire of her dear parents' love, and took precedence in her birth of all their daughters, and as much exceeded in her worth for beauty answered with her mind, and both with housewife. And as much exceeded in her worth for beauty answered with her mind, and both with housewifery. All the fair beauty exceeded in her worth for beauty answered with her mind, and both with housewifery, all the fair beauty of young dames that used her company. And therefore, being the worthiest dame, the worthiest man did wed of ample Troy. Him Neptune of ample Troy. Him Neptune stooped beneath the royal force. Him Neptune stooped beneath the royal force of Idomen, his sparkling eyes deluding, and the course of his illustrious lineaments so out of nature bound, that back nor forward could he stir, but as he grew to ground, stood like a pillar or a high tree, and neither moved nor feared, when straight the royal Cretan's dart in his mid-breast appeared. It brake the curates that were proof to every other dart, yet now they cleft and wrung. The lance stuck, shaking in his heart with panting made it shake, but Mars did now remit the greatness of it, and the king panting made it shake, but Mars did now remit the greatness of it. And the king now the greatness of it. And the king now quitting the brag fit of glory in Deiphobus, thus terribly exclaimed. Atrides, when I ever seemed the same at every part, thus terribly exclaimed. Deiphobus, now may we think that we are evenly. Now, Deiphobus, now may we think that we are evenly famed, that 3 for 1 have sent to Dis. But come, change blows with me, just confirmed. I believe it's Dis and not Dis, the title for Pluto or Hades. I don't know Latin is the problem. I only know ancient Greek, which is why I look it up. That's why we have the internet. Dis. Okay. Okay. Thus terribly exclaimed Deiphobus, now may we think that we are evenly famed, that 3 for 1 have sent to Dis. But come, that 3 for 1 have sent to Dis. But come, change blows with me. But come, change blows with me. Thy vaunts for him thou slewest for him thou slewest were vain. Come, wretch, that thou mayst see what issue Jove hath. Jove begot Minos, the strength of Crete. Minos begot Deucalion. Deucalion did beget me. Minos begot Deucalion. Deucalion did beget me, Idomen, now Creta's king, that here my ships have brought to bring thyself, thy father, friends, all Iliad's pomp to naught. Now Creta's king, that here my ships have brought to bring thyself, thy father, friends, all Iliad's pomp to naught. Deiphobus at 2 ways stood, in doubt to call someone with some retreat to be his aid, or try the chance alone. At last the first seemed best to him. In doubt to call someone with some retreat to be his aid, or try the chance alone. At last the first seemed best to him, and back he went to call Anchises' son to friend, who stood in troop the last of all, where still he served, which made him still incense against the king, that being amongst his best their peer, he graced not anything his wrong deserts. Deiphobus spake to him, standing near. Okay, I made a Deiphobus voice, but this episode, so I can't check. I'll just have to remember it. Aeneas, prince of Trojans. Deiphobus spake to him, standing near. Aeneas, prince of Trojans, if any touch appear of glory in thee, thou must now assist thy sister's lord. If any touch appear of glory in thee, thou must now assist thy sister's lord, and one that to thy tenderest youth did careful guard afford, Alcathous, whom Creta's king hath chiefly slain to thee, his right most challenging thy hand. Come, therefore, follow me. This much excited his good mind, and set his heart on fire against the Cretan, who, childlike, dissolved not in his ire, but stood him firm, as when in hills a strength-relying boar, alone, and hearing hunters come, whom tumult flies before, upthrusts his bristles, whets his tusks, sets fire on his red eyes, and his brave and in his brave prepared repulse, both dogs and men despise. And in his brave prepared repulse, both dogs and men despise. So stood the famous for his lance, nor shunned the coming charge that resolute Aeneas brought. Yet since the odds were large, he called with good right to his aid. War-skilled Ascalaphus. Apharius, Meriones, the strong Deipyrus, and Nestor's honorable son. Ascalaphus, I'm pretty sure about. I don't know. Apharius. Good thing we checked. Deipyrus. See, I call it Deipyrus. I wonder if I pronounced it already the other way. Let's check the master guide here. Oh. How did this get through like this? I did have it written as Deipyrus, but somehow I wrote it a second time on this other guide in a different pronunciation. That's not supposed to be possible. Because I always, maybe it's spelled differently? No, I don't know. Because I always do a find, delete all duplicates thing before I go forward. So it shouldn't be able to happen. But hopefully that's just a one-off. Okay, so the one that we didn't know was Apharius. Okay. Yet since the odds were large, he called with good right to his aid war-skilled Ascalaphus, Apharius, Meriones, the strong Deipyrus, and Nestor's honorable son. Let's check Idomeneus again. Atrides, would I ever seemed the same at every part. Nestor's honorable son. Come near, my friends, said he, and add your aids to me alone. Fear taints me worthily, though firm I stand. Fear taints me worthily, though firm I stand, and show it not. Aeneas, great in fight, and one that bears youth in his flower, that bears the greatest might, comes on with aim direct at me. Had I his youthful limb to bear my mind, he should yield. Had I his youthful limb to bear my mind, he should yield fame, or I would yield it him. Had I his youthful limb to bear my mind, he should yield fame, or I would yield it him. This said, all held in many souls one ready helpful mind. Clapped shields. This said, all held in many souls one ready helpful mind. Clapped shields and shoulders, and stood close. Aeneas, not inclined with more presumption than the king, called aid as well as he, divine Agenor, Helen's love, who followed instantly, and all their forces following them. Oh, okay. I was wondering, like, why is he calling him Agenor Helen's love? But that's two different people, Agenor and Paris. Agenor and Helen's love. As well as he, divine Agenor, Helen's love, who followed instantly, and all their forces following them. As after bellwethers the whole flocks follow to their drink, which sight the shepherd cheers. Nor was Aeneas' joy less moved to see such troops attend his honored person. And all these fought close about his friend. But two of them past all the rest had strong desire. But two of them past all the rest had strong desire to shed the blood of either. Idomen and Cytherea's seed. Aeneas first bestowed his lance, which the others seeing shunned, and that, thrown from an idle hand, struck trembling in the ground. But Idomen's, discharged at him, had no such vain success, which Oenomaus' entrails found. That's no way that's correct. I totally wrote that wrong. That has to be wrong. Oinomaus. I see what I was trying to do there, but that does not sound like a English pronunciation of a Greek character's name. Or it doesn't sound like a Latinized one. All right, so let's do Enom. That one sounds really messed up, but I'll do it. Let's make a middle ground here. Oenomaus. Trembling in the ground. But Idomen's discharged. Trembling in the ground. But Idomen's, discharged at him, had no such vain success, which Oenomaus' entrails found. The rhyme or the meter doesn't even want this to be Oenomaus. No such vain success, which Oenomaus' entrails found. I gotta do Oenomaus. That I can't. It doesn't fit. No such vain success, which Oenomaus' entrails found. No such vain success, which Oenomaus' entrails found. Which Oenomaus' entrails found, in which it did impress his sharp pile to his fall. His palms tore the returning. Impress his sharp pile to his fall. His palms tore his returning earth. Idomeneus straight stepped in and plucked his javelin forth. No such vain success, which Oenomaus' entrails found. Vain success, which Oenomaus' entrails found. That's better, yeah. No such vain success, which Oenomaus' entrails found, in which it did impress his sharp pile to his fall. His palms tore his returning earth. Idomeneus straight stepped in and plucked his javelin forth, but could not spoil his goodly arms. Javelin forth, but could not spoil his goodly arms. They pressed him so with darts. And now the long toil of the fight had spent his vigorous parts, and made them less apt to avoid the foe that should advance, or, when himself advanced again, to run and fetch his lance, and therefore in stiff fights of stand he spent the cruel day. Oh, okay, this is talking about Idomeneus. So with darts. And now the long toil of the fight had spent his vigorous parts, and made them less apt to avoid the foe that should advance, or, when himself advanced again, to run and fetch his lance, and therefore in stiff fights of stand he spent the cruel day. When, coming swiftly from the slain, Deiphobus gave way to his bright javelin at the king, whom he could never brook, but then he lost his envy too. Deiphobus gave way to his bright javelin at the king, whom he could never brook. But then he lost his envy too. His lance yet deadly took Ascalaphus, the son of Mars, quite through his shoulder flew. Quite through his shoulder flew the violent head, and down he fell. Nor yet by all means knew wide-throated Mars his son was fallen, but in Olympus' top sat canopied with golden clouds. Jove's counsel had shut up both him and all the other gods from that time's equal task, which now about Ascalaphus strife set. His shining casque Deiphobus had forced from him, but instantly leaped in Mars swift Meriones, and struck with his long javelin the right arm of Deiphobus. Which made his hand let fall the sharp-topped helmet. The pressed earth resounding. Of Deiphobus, which made his hand let fall the sharp-topped helmet, the pressed earth resounding therewithal. When, vulture-like, Meriones rushed in again and drew from out the low parts of his arm. When, vulture-like, Meriones rushed in again and drew from out the low parts of his arm his javelin, and then flew back to his friends. Deiphobus, faint with the blood's excess, fallen from his wound, was carefully conveyed out of the press. was carefully conveyed out of the press by his kind brother by both sides. Conveyed out of the press by his kind brother by both sides, Polites, till they gat his horse and chariot that were still set fit for his retreat, and bore him now to Ilion. The rest fought fiercely on, and set a mighty foot on foot. Fiercely on, and set a mighty foot on foot. When next Anchises' son, Aphareus, Calatorides, Thoon, Asius, Adamus, I think that's good. Mighty foot on foot. When next Anchises' son, Aphareus Calatorides, that ran upon him, struck just in the throat with his keen lance, and straight his head forsook his upright carriage, and his shield, his helm, and all with him fell to the earth, where ruinous death made prize of every limb. The earth, where ruinous death made prize of every limb. Antilochus, discovering well that Thoon's heart took check, let fly, and cut the hollow vein that runs up to his neck along his back part quite in twain. Down in the dust he fell, upwards, and with extended hands bade all the world farewell. Antilochus rushed nimbly in, and looking round made prize of his fair arms, in which affair his round-set enemies let fly their lances, thundering on his advanced targe, but could not get his flesh. The god that shakes the earth, his flesh. The god that shakes the earth took charge of Nestor's son, and kept him safe, who never was away, but still amongst the thickest foes his busy lance did play, observing ever when he might, far off or near, offend, and watching Asius' son in prease he spied him, and did send, close coming on, a dart at him, that smote in midst his shield, in which the sharp head of the lance the blue-haired god made yield, not pleased to yield his pupil's life, in whose shield half the dart stuck like a truncheon burned with fire. On earth lay the other part. He, seeing no better end of all, retired in fear of worse. But him Meriones pursued, and his lance found full course to the other's life. It wounded him to the other's life. And his lance found full course to the other's life. It wounded him betwixt the privy parts. And navel, where to wretched men that war's most violent smarts most undergo. where to wretched men that war's most violent smarts most undergo wounds cheap. Men that war's most violent smarts must undergo. Okay. And naval, where to wretched men that war's most violent smarts must undergo. That war's most violent smarts must undergo wounds chiefly vex. His dart Meriones pursued. Chiefly vexed. His dart Meriones pursued, and Otamus so strived with it. And Otamus so strived with it, and his misease, as doth a with it, as so strived with it, and his misease, with it, and his misease, as doth a bullock puff and storm, whom in disdained bands the upland herdsmen strive to cast, so fallen beneath the hands of his stern foe, Asiades did struggle, pant. Asiades, of his stern foe, Asiades, beneath the hands of his stern foe, Asiades did struggle. Stern foe, Asiades did struggle, pant and rave. Asiades did struggle, pant and rave. But no long time, for when the lance was plucked out, up he gave his tortured soul. Then Troy's turn came, when with a Thracian sword the temples of Deipyrus did Helenus afford. With a Thracian sword the temples of Deipyrus did Helenus afford. Deipyrus did Helenus afford so huge a blow, it struck all light out of his cloudy eyes, and cleft his helmet, which a Greek there fighting made his prize. It fell so full beneath his feet. Atrides grieved to see that sight, and threatening shook a lance. That sight, and threatening, shook a lance at Helenus, and he a bow half drew at him. At once out flew both shaft and lance. At once out flew both shaft and lance. The shaft Atrides' curate struck, and far away did glance. Atrides' dart of Helenus, and far away did glance. Atrides' dart of Helenus the thrust out. Atrides' dart of Helenus the thrust out bow hand struck, and through the hand stuck in the bow. Agenor's hand did pluck from. Let's just check that again. Agenor. Stuck in the bow. Agenor's hand did pluck from forth the nailed prisoner. Agenor's hand did pluck from forth the nailed prisoner the javelin quickly out, and fairly with a little wool enwrapping round about the wounded hand, within a scarf he bore it. Round about the wounded hand, within a scarf he bore it, which his squire had ready for him. Yet the wound would needs he should retire. Yet the wound would needs he should retire.